Do you want to live the most successful and fulfilling life possible? Of course you do, and I want that for you. That's why today I'm going to share with you the single most empowering lesson that I have experienced and observed in others in over 27 years of holding space in psychedelic ceremonies. My name is Eric Osborne, and in case you don't know, I am one of the most experienced space holders in the world of psilocybin wellness. I've spent the last 27 years of my life working devotedly in this field to help people just like you become closer to who they were meant to be. Today we're talking about something that is simple but not easy, as is most of the work that we discuss on this channel. It's perspective. How is it that perspective can allow us to have a successful and fulfilling life? Well, there's ultimately two ways of seeing the world, and that is either the world is happening to you or the world is happening for you. Experience, life happens to us or for us. It's a very important distinction, and it's one that is built into our language if we're not aware. Humans are wired for negative bias. This is part of our evolutionary biology. It is, yes, a remnant of keeping us safe, and it's perhaps outworn its welcome. Now, what we're talking about here is not some Pollyanna, spiritual bypassing, toxic positivity. We're talking about a real-world application of a perspective that can literally change our reality. How is this? Well, first of all, I want to invite you to consider a question that Albert Einstein posed, and that is the single most important question we can ask ourselves, he said, is whether or not we see the universe as a friendly or unfriendly place. Now, tell me, why would one of the most advanced minds in science say that this question is one of the most important, whether or not we see the world as inherently positive or inherently negative? It's the same question as to whether or not life is happening to us or life is happening for us. And why that's important is because how we see the world shapes how we experience the world. You're not seeing the world as it is. You're seeing the world as you are. And this can be a very challenging realization to wake up to. When we look around and we see things that are dissatisfying or we find ourselves complaining, we're forced, if we're aware, to recognize that this is us. This is not the inherent situation. Many times people come out of their psychedelic experience and they say to me, Eric, I realize that nothing has meaning. Nothing intrinsically, inherently means anything. And often they say that for a while that's frightening. For a time, it feels like spinning out of control, being lost in the void, a black hole where nothing matters. And if they sit with it long enough, and if they have wise enough and thoughtful enough and careful enough integration, they can learn that this means we get to apply meaning to everything. Nothing means anything. There is no intrinsic meaning to life. The meaning is what we apply to it. Perspective is like a lens, and if you put on rose-colored glasses, well, as the saying goes, you see the world through rose-colored glasses. And likewise, if you put on blue, yellow, green, any other colored lens, it will affect the way that you see the world. This is an interesting comparison because the color of sunglasses lenses can actually impact your mood. I have two pairs of sunglasses that I wear, one very dark for when it's extremely bright, and some that are actually yellow tinted. And I find that the yellow tinted lenses still help to protect my eyes from all but the most powerful rays of the sun. And when I wear those yellowish tinted glasses, my mood lifts. I feel differently about the world that I'm looking at. This is biology. This is science. Now, as I said, I've seen this outcome in so many psychedelic experiences. And the one that is occurring to me right now that is perhaps the most profound was also one that um, seemed to have some kind of a, oh, how should I say this? I don't want to call it necessarily a supernatural. Um, Maybe transcendental is the best way to consider this. So, uh, holding ceremony once for 20 or so people on a retreat, we had at the integration session, we had one woman who spoke up and said that in her mushroom session that her aborted child came to her and said, "You don't have to be sad about me, mommy. What you did was okay. I wasn't supposed to be born." Interestingly enough, within that circle, 3 women had the same experience on the same session. None of them knew beforehand that the other had had an abortion. It was never discussed. And yet, all 3 of them had the same, quote, visitation from their unborn children. All 3 received the same message. Now, you can do what you want with that. You can consider that a spiritual event, or you can consider it simply coincidence. It doesn't really matter to me. What matters is that all 3 of those women had the same perspective shift that immediately, drastically, and forever changed their lives. They didn't have to look in the mirror and feel guilt and shame anymore. They didn't have to wonder whether they had done the right thing any longer. And that allowed them to live a freedom that they had not experienced for many, many years. I would invite you to consider in your life, where is it that you have the perspective that things are happening to you rather than for you? It can be as simple as waiting in traffic. We find ourselves frustrated because the person in front of us isn't moving at the speed we would like them to. That happened to me this morning, taking the kids to school. And I very quickly collected myself, took a deep breath, and understood that no, this is exactly what's supposed to be happening. I don't know why. Many times we don't know until many, many years down the road. Sometimes we never know. But what we can know is that we have the power to choose our perspective. Again, I want to touch on this component of toxic positivity or spiritual bypassing because it's a real problem that exists in these kinds of conversations. Acknowledging that things are happening for us rather than to us doesn't mean that they're not difficult. Absolutely, extremely challenging things happen in our lives. Myself, I've been pretty open about my experience and history in navigating borderline personality disorder. This is something that went undiagnosed for many, many years. And until I came to understand what I was struggling with, I just thought that the world was out to get me, that everything was coming at me. Life was happening to me. And it took some time as I began to explore my condition and the positive sides of it, because yes, there are. And in working with people with significant mental health challenges, I have certainly seen more often than not that our greatest perceived flaws or faults are really just a cover for some of our most amazing skills and abilities once we have found healing in those areas. And once I started to shift my perspective, this first one, to override my negativity bias, which is extremely rampant in BPD, I began to see that no, the world is actually happening for me. I could look back in my life and see that what I perceived as struggles and challenges, and were in fact very difficult scenarios, were some of the most liberating experiences that I could have ever encountered. I was arrested for psilocybin mushrooms in 2015. I thought it was the end of my world at that point. However, it's what allowed me to gain credibility and ultimately launch the world's first psilocybin mushroom retreat. I went through a couple of divorces that were really difficult, really painful, and was separated from my children for quite a while. And now I'm back with my kids, and our relationship is stronger than it ever could have been had I stayed in those marriages. And these are just two instances of some incredibly painful moments in my life that, in retrospect, I'm able to look back and see, no, this is happening for me, or this was happening for me. And now I can apply that perspective a little more readily in the moment. It doesn't mean that I don't get caught up and don't have to remind myself, especially when things are difficult. Just recently, we went through a series of very challenging home ownership issues, plumbing problems, roofing problems, and I'm still not sure how they've worked for me, but I know at some point I'm going to look back and see, yes, that's the case. Now, in our next video, we're going to talk about this from a scientific perspective, from a spiritual perspective, and we're going to explore how to more directly navigate the real difficulties that come up. Loved ones leave us, any number of very challenging situations that come up. And I want to give you some practices and some ways that practically looking at those situations that can help move you faster into this perspective of the things are happening to me, not for me. I hope you've enjoyed this. I would love it if you would like, subscribe, share, do all those things. It boosts the algorithm. And if you don't, that's okay. It's happening to me. Everything's going just like it should. Thanks for joining me. Until next time.